Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. Welcome to It's Time for More Injury Funding, the podcast for all who want to learn about legal funding and its significance in the personal injury, product liability, medical practice, and many other types of law practice domains. I'm your host, Laura, founder and CEO of More Injury Funding, the legal funding counselors with passion for law, medicine, legal funding at the heart for all suffering individuals. In this episode, we have a special guest. Frank Ramos, lawyer, husband, father of two sons, David and Michael, and he is based in Florida. Well, hello, Frank. How are you today?
Good, good. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So let me tell you a little bit about Frank. So he's a partner of Clark Silverglade, and he's on the defense side of law, where he practices in the areas of commercial litigation, drug and medical device, products liability, and catastrophic personal injury. He is AV rated by Martindale-Hubbell and is listed in Best Lawyers in America for his defense work in product liability matters. Frank has been with Clark Silverglade for virtually his entire career. He has tried to verdict personal injury, medical malpractice, product liability, and inverse condemnation cases. As a certified mediator, Frank has resolved numerous matters through alternative dispute resolution. Mr. Ramos has written 20 books for lawyers. That's amazing, Frank.
Thank you.
Edited 5 books for lawyers and has written over 400 articles for lawyers and business professionals. He also mentors young attorneys. And in his spare time, Frank enjoys writing, reading science fiction, and listening to his two sons, David and Michael, perform classical and jazz music. And tell me where your sons are now in their music careers.
Sure. My
Frank.
older son, who's 25, David, is pursuing a master's in conducting at the University of Miami. My younger son currently is on tour with his band, and he plays the bass guitar. He's 22.
That's just absolutely amazing. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
today, Attorney Frank Ramos will dive deep into the topic of ChatGPT, which is becoming exponentially popular and widely used and discussed in so many, if not all, live and industry settings around the globe. But today, we'll focus on its application and utilization in the practice of law, be it in legal research, contract review, legal chatbots, predictive analytics, and anything else that helps lawyers save time, reduce costs, and improve quality of their work. We will chat about what is ChatGPT, how is ChatGPT applied in the legal world, and its pros and cons, maybe pitfalls or anything to look out for, all related to ChatGPT. At the end of this episode, we'll have a pop-up fun question for our guest Frank today. So stay tuned in. You, my dear listeners, are for a treat today with attorney Frank Ramos. So Frank, welcome once again.
Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
It's so wonderful to have you with us today. Please tell us, how would you describe ChatGPT? What does it stand for, and what's the buzz about it in the legal world?
Sure. ChatGPT sort of came into our consciousness last fall, and GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, and so it's known as ChatGPT. The current version is 4.0. That's the version that if you want to pay about $20 a month, you can download either on an app or just go on your laptop or desktop and use. And that was, I think, came online just a few months ago, and it's the latest version. 4.5 is expected to come online sometime this fall, and 5.0 sometime next summer, each version being much stronger and more useful than the last. And so a lot of lawyers have gotten on it. I think what caught a lot of people's attention is that version 4.0 passed the bar exam at the 90th percentile. The version before 3.5 couldn't pass the bar. And so suddenly that got in all of our consciousness. We're wondering, well, if it can pass the bar, it can probably do a lot of things that lawyers can do. And ever since then, a lot of lawyers, firms, and in-house counsel have been trying to figure out how they can use it to be more efficient, to do better work, and to improve their work product.
You said pass the bar. What do you mean by that?
Well, they gave the ChatGPT 4.0 a bar exam, and I'm not sure logistically how they did it, but it took the exam and passed it to 90th percentile. So it obviously aced the exam. And that's what really kind of made it take off. Like all of us had to think about that. It's like, oh, if we can pass the bar exam, what else can it do? And a lot of firms and a lot of lawyers have been trying to tinker with it and figure it out. Some people have used it well, some people have not used it very well. As I'm sure you've probably seen in the papers, there was that New York lawyer who was sanctioned recently for misusing ChatGPT. There was another young lawyer, I believe, in Texas, did the same. It's not really meant as a research tool. We can get into that later in our conversation. It's meant
Mhm.
to really kind of explore ideas and concepts and think through things a little bit more deeply. It's more like a sounding board than a legal research tool. It's not tied to Westlaw or Lexis, although they're coming up with their own AI models. And so it's just trying to find whatever it can find online. And it doesn't tell you often, like it didn't find something, it just kind of fills in the blanks, these things called hallucinations, where basically it really just makes things up. And so you have to be very careful when you're doing it for legal research. I don't really recommend it for that. But if at some point some platforms like LexisNexis start incorporating it, was Westlaw, which they are, then that'd be different thing to do. But the ChatGPT 4 is not really used for that. It's more for coming up with questions or ideas or thoughts on how to handle your cases and your matters.
And from your personal experience, can you train ChatGPT? Let's say, if you ask a question once, you do not get an answer we were expecting or hoping for, or you feel like some information is missing. Can you ask that question in a different way and get a different response?
Yeah, it's a great question. Basically, you can learn with ChatGPT. There's these things called prompts. It's very similar when we do a search on Google and we do a search and something doesn't come up exactly the way, so we change our search term. When we do searches on Westlaw or Lexis or other providers that do legal research, we're constantly changing our search terms and what we're inputting to get a different output. And ChatGPT is no different. So you type something in, you don't really get the response you want, and you modify it, and then you kind of go through this in a series of questions until you find out what you want. Maybe you're looking for questions to ask a party in a deposition, and it's a case involving product. You start asking them, what do I ask about this? The answers are kind of generic, and then you say, well, what do I ask this witness about this situation or these circumstances? And then the questions become much more directed, and you keep doing that until you find what you want. It's no different. People who use it to like help them write articles or letters or emails. They'll write something and then they'll try to get it to sound like them. They'll say, well, can you do this in the first person? Can you do this the second person? Can you use the active voice? Can you avoid adverbs? Can you, and then you try to emulate your voice using the ChatGPT. So by the end of it, it sounds a lot like you because you know how you write. You teach it how to write like you,
Mhm.
and then you give it some content, and you go through this process with it, and you'll find that basically all your searches are saved. You don't have to save them, delete them. It's generally saved, and so it creates this sort of library of Q&As that you've done with it and the answers it's given to you in response to those questions.
It's just absolutely fascinating. And you may have answered some of this, but how is ChatGPT, how has it been applied in a legal setting so far? Do you see it being used more lately? Can you possibly foresee its usage in the legal world? And do you believe it can eventually replace people to a certain degree?
Yeah, I think what a lot of lawyers and law firms are doing is that they're finding tasks that are a little bit simpler, maybe even simplistic, that we all do, and trying to find ways of having ChatGPT do it. Maybe come up with clauses in contracts or revise contracts, or to draft, basic emails or correspondence. Maybe create a library of correspondence you can use later. And so, depending on what you do, whether you're on plaintiff defense, whether you're civil or criminal, whether you're doing personal injury or family law, lawyers are trying to figure out how to become more efficient and improve the quality of their work through its usage. And it does have limitations. Like I said, it's not really used or should not be used for legal research, but it can be used to help you, with your press releases. It can help you with your marketing materials. It can help you draft questions for a deposition or come up with an outline for a hearing, or maybe not the research for a motion, but at least come up with ideas that you can include in a motion. And so again, it's sort of having sort of free labor. It's like having a free employee that helps you think through things. Now, the problem with that is that eventually is that's going to replace a number of the tasks that we perform. And for clients who are looking to save money, they're going to ask us, outside counsel, how we can do things more efficiently and more effectively. And so big firms that have hired lots of people, lots of lawyers, lots of staff, and a lot of the work, or at least some of the work that they do may be fungible, is going to be replaced by ChatGPT. So no given lawyer will be replaced, but enough tasks will be replaced that they'll have to downsize in the size of their firms.
Very interesting. So Frank, you've lived and practiced in Florida most of your life. Can you tell us if ChatGPT can possibly recognize Florida in your particular state or any other state for that matter, specific new or updated laws, regulations, contracts, legal procedures? If so, how can it help the legal community now and going forward? On the contrast, can it cause some damage? Is it trustworthy? And can a law firm blindly trust the ChatGPT as an AI using natural language processing, NLP, to generate human-like responses? Can we humans trust this pre-trained friend of ours?
Well, it's a great question. So ChatGPT, even the 4.0 version, is only updated, I think, through September 2021. There's some plugins, some sort of add-ons that can help you search the internet. So it's hard to use it for actual legal research. You can probably ask it questions about Florida versus another state, and it can provide you some general information. But any information that you find that you're trying to use as a research tool, you really have to double check it. You have to look up the cases it cites or the statutes it references and make sure that they're actually valid, because as we saw what happened in New York, the ChatGPT just made up cases. It's better, I think, as a tool to help you brainstorm an issue where you sit down and you're trying to conceptualize how to handle a case or how to handle, the flow chart of a case. And, or if you want to write sort of processes or checklists for you, it'll probably come up with a lot of ideas that you may have overlooked or forgotten about or not even conceived. And that's really, I think, a good way of using it. I think it's sort of an expansive model where it helps you think through things versus helping you find specific details or information about something.
Okay. Is ChatGPT applicable in plaintiffs and defense law?
I think you're going to see a lot of plaintiffs lawyers incorporate a lot more than defense lawyers, because plaintiffs don't bill by the hour. And so they're constantly trying to find ways to be more efficient, to try to get information in and out. I've seen plaintiff lawyers try to help them draft and respond to discovery, and a lot of sort of the rudimentary aspects of the practice, whether it's written discovery, third-party subpoenas, basic interview questions. I'm seeing a lot of attorneys, especially in the plaintiff side, especially attorneys that don't bill by the hour, trying to figure out how to get as much work out of every minute that they have. On the defense side, they're doing some of that as well. That's getting pushed upon them a lot by clients who are trying to figure out how they can become more efficient. And so I think it's an efficiency tool. Primarily, I think it really helps us do things faster and more quickly. And, if you were to type in, draft me a letter regarding A, B, and C in this type of voice, the first version wouldn't be great, but then you'd ask it to fix this or fix that. And that whole process would take maybe 3 minutes to do. And you would have, a full-length letter that may have taken you an hour to draft, and you draft it in 3 minutes. So that's kind of where I'm seeing it used the most.
That's just fabulous. And how long you've been using it personally?
I've been using it for a few months now. Once 4.0 came on and you have to pay for it 20 months, it's, a very reasonable price. I started experimenting with it. I try to do different things with it. I try to use different prompts. Again, it's a very prompt-driven platform where you are telling it what to do and you're doing it as specifically as possible. You see what the outcome is, and then you tweak the prompt. You keep tweaking it until you get the answer you want. Understanding, again, that there are limitations to what it can be used for. Again, not a research tool, more sort of a brainstorming tool, or a tool to write copy or to write articles, write posts. If you're very active on social media, you can probably teach it how to, what posts you want to draft for social media. And you'll teach it how to do it in your voice. You'll teach it what to say, what not to say. And you could, and once you've trained it in that regard, it's pretty easy to have it, generate all your social media posts. So that's something else people are using it for.
And very interesting. That's what I was going to ask you, if you only use it for work or for personal reasons as well.
Yeah, you can use it to help you write poetry or short stories. You can help write correspondence, help you if you have to give a toast to somebody, you have to give a toast, and help me think through that a little bit. I didn't obviously copy that, but it gave me some ideas. It's good to kind of think through how to do something. It'll tell you, okay, these are the steps on how to do A, B, or C. So again, it's like another layer in your approach to whatever problem you're dealing with. Sometimes you're having a hard time coming up with an answer or solution. It may trigger a thought process that you may not have otherwise. conceived of, and it'll help you, achieve whatever goals you have in mind.
Very interesting. So you said you've been using it for a couple of months. Are you getting more excited about it? Would that
Yeah, I'm
be
looking
passing
forward.
day?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the later versions. I think 4.5 will be much better. Certainly 5.0 will be much better than that. It's hard to, I assume they're going to try to find ways to make it stronger, make it more responsive. They're probably going to give it more access to more recent information and allow you to interact with it in different ways. And I suspect a lot of the concerns people have with the current version will be addressed. A lot of this is sort of this feedback loop where ChatGPT is, it's taking all our information, which raises certain privacy concerns because we're sharing so much information with ChatGPT on their terms and conditions. They're pretty explicit. They tell you, that they're kind of taking all that information to make it better, but they are taking, whatever information you provide. So be very conscious when you work with and type in prompts to ChatGPT. You're not providing confidential, proprietary client information. You try to do it in a little bit more abstract or generic way. Because a lot of that's just being absorbed and it's probably being used and shared with other people, because all of this is sort of like this large amalgam of just information that's going in.
And so what apps would you recommend for people who, like myself, use phone as a primarily tool of communication?
I would just go and log in and get the ChatGPT app and log that in. I believe there's certain add-ons. I haven't really been experimenting with the add-ons yet, because I'm still trying to fully grasp and appreciate the scope of ChatGPT 4. But you go on, 3.5 is still free if you want to do that. 4.0 costs $20 a month. There are other platforms that are sort of, chatbot related. There's Bard for Google. Bing has its own platform. I still think ChatGPT 4 is sort of the gold standard, but Bard is free. It doesn't have a limit on the number of questions you can ask. ChatGPT can only ask 25 prompts in every 3 hours. And if you're really active, you can see how you can go through that pretty quickly. I assume the next version will allow you to have more prompts, or maybe at some point this one will allow you to have more prompts. But there are different, varieties of this. So, like I said, ChatGPT, there's Bard, there's Bing. Sit down, just download them on your phone. You can just reach them on your desktop or laptop, experiment, see which ones work best for you. Something like Bard, it's more updated because it's not limited by a deadline September 2021, so it has more updated information. And you have to see what you're using it for. Each of us will use it for different reasons. So try to find out which platform using chatbots is helping you the most.
This is great. I hope, my dear listeners, you've learned as much as I did today about the ChatGPT and its application in today's and future's legal realm. And as promised, here's a fun pop-up question for you. Are you ready, Frank?
Sure.
What should I have asked you, but I didn't?
I think the one question is where will we be like 20 years from now, and whether or not we're going to be replaced by these chatbots and AI. And I think the points are to get to where a lot of the tasks we perform will be replaced by AI, and the lawyers who know how to use AI are going to replace the lawyers who don't use AI. And so now is the time for all of us to really embrace this technology, learn as much as possible, don't bury our heads in the sand, so that we stay ahead of the curve.
Well, Frank, thank you so much. That was an amazing time spent with you, learning a great deal about ChatGPT. If anyone needs your help and is looking for Clark Silverglade, how can they reach you, Frank? Can you provide your phone number, email, website, social media platforms?
You can find me at miamimentor.com. It's my personal website. You can find me at my email at FRAMOS. It's F Ramos at CSPAlaw.com. That's C as in Charlie, S as in Sam, P as in Paul, A as in Anthony, Law, LAW.com.
That's so great. Frank, again, thank you so much for being my very special guest at It's Time for More Injury Funding podcast today.
Thanks for having me.
Have a good day, and I can't wait to see you all and hear you all very soon at my next upcoming episode. Tune in soon for our next guest. Until then, be well.